Have you ever felt that something was off with someone, but you couldn't quite explain why? You couldn't prove it, but deep down you knew. That moment when the smile feels hollow, the conversations feel rehearsed, and something inside you whispers, they're not who they pretend to be. It's not paranoia. It's not imagination. It's your instincts speaking up, louder than ever, telling you the truth your heart tried to ignore for too long. And then it happens. You finally know. You see them clearly. The mask falls. The excuses don't make sense anymore. And that's when everything changes. Not just for you, but for them too. Because once they know you know, the game shifts, and so do they. You start to notice how the energy in the room shifts when they enter. How they avoid eye contact or overcompensate with fake charm. You watch as they try to act like everything is normal, but nothing feels the same. They know you've seen behind the curtain. They feel exposed, vulnerable, so they scramble. They pretend, they perform, but it's too late. You've already woken up. And they can feel it. People like this, those who manipulate, lie, deceive, they survive by staying hidden. Your awareness is a threat. Your clarity is their fear. Because when you stop believing them, they lose control. And control is all they ever wanted. This is where your power begins. In that moment of realization, you gain something most people never find: emotional freedom. You're not stuck anymore. You're not blind. You can choose who stays, who goes, and who never gets a second chance. That truth you now carry, uncomfortable as it may be, is your liberation. And it's the beginning of everything you've been seeking: peace, strength, self-respect. But it won't come easy. When bad people realize they've been caught, they don't surrender. They fight harder, not with fists, but with silence, confusion, guilt, and charm. They'll do anything to keep you from walking away with your dignity intact. That's why you need to keep watching, because what comes next is crucial. The tricks they'll play, the words they'll twist, the pressure they'll apply. You need to know what to expect, so you don't fall for it again. This video isn't just about calling out toxic behavior. It's about helping you reclaim the power they tried to take from you. The power to trust yourself, to believe your gut, to stand firm in what you know. You didn't imagine it. You didn't overreact. You woke up. And now it's time to stay awake. If you've ever been manipulated, betrayed, or made to feel small, you're not alone. And you're not broken. You were just too kind to see the truth sooner. But not anymore. From here on, you protect your peace. You walk in truth. And you never shrink to fit someone's illusion again. Keep watching. Because this is just the beginning of your rise. They begin to panic quietly. When someone bad realizes you see them for who they truly are, their first instinct isn't to apologize. It's to manipulate harder. They may smile, but behind that smile is fear. Not the kind of fear that leads to change, but the fear of being powerless. You took something from them, something they thought you'd never find. Your awareness, your clarity, your strength. And now they're scrambling to pull you back into their web. They'll shift their tone, speak softer, act kinder, say all the right things. But listen closely. It's not sincerity. It's strategy. They start testing your boundaries, looking for cracks in your certainty. They want to know if you really see them or if this is just a phase. They try to confuse you with kindness, then guilt you with silence. They'll bring up old memories, pretend to reminisce, try to drag you back into the comfort zone they once controlled. But your heart knows better. Your spirit is awake now. And this is your test to hold the line, because what they want most is your doubt, not your love, not your forgiveness, your doubt. Doubt in your truth, doubt in your strength, doubt in your decision to pull away. They will lie, boldly, effortlessly, without flinching, because they've done it before. And every time you gave them the benefit of the doubt, it made them stronger. But now, they can feel the shift. You're not looking at them the same way. You're not listening through the same filter. You've stopped hoping they'll change. And that scares them, because when you stop hoping for the old version of someone, you start building a life without them in it. That's when the manipulation intensifies. That's when they get desperate. They may start to gaslight you, tell you that you're overthinking, exaggerating, being dramatic. They may act wounded, like you're the one hurting them, like your clarity is cruelty. But don't fall for it. The truth isn't cruel. Truth is clarity. Truth is freedom. And truth is the most dangerous thing to people who rely on lies. You owe it to yourself to stay grounded, to trust your perception, to stand firm in what your experience has shown you. This isn't about revenge. It's not about anger. It's about finally honoring your own reality. You've spent enough time bending, doubting, shrinking. Now it's time to rise. You are not difficult for refusing to be manipulated. You are not cruel for protecting your peace. You are not broken for needing space. You are brave for seeing what others ignore. You are strong for walking away from confusion. You are powerful for standing alone in your truth. This journey is not about them anymore. It's about you, becoming who you were always meant to be without the shadows pulling you back. Stay alert. Stay clear. And remember, your strength threatens their control because your truth exposes their weakness. Keep walking. You're closer than ever to becoming untouchable. When they realize they can't manipulate you anymore, they don't just walk away. They plot. They shift from fake kindness to quiet sabotage. Because if they can't control you directly, they'll try to control how others see you. They whisper. They twist your words. They create a version of you that fits their story. A version that makes them look innocent and you look unstable. This is not an accident. It's a strategy, a psychological war where the goal is simple: isolate you, discredit you, break your confidence from the outside in. But this is not where you fall. This is where you rise higher than ever. You might feel the sting of betrayal all over again, not just because they're lying about you, but because others might believe them. That's the hardest part. Watching people you trusted question your integrity, doubt your motives. You wonder if speaking your truth was a mistake. You question if silence would have been easier. But remember, this silence only serves them. It lets their story breathe while yours suffocates. You don't need to shout to defend yourself. Your peace is your proof. Your consistency is your protection. The truth has a way of surfacing. And when it does, it won't need your voice to validate it. It will speak for itself. They thrive on chaos because it blurs the truth, but clarity is your weapon. Keep showing up with calm. Keep standing in your truth without apology. That's what they fear most. Your refusal to break. Your ability to keep moving forward when they try to pull you backward. They want you emotional. They want you unstable. Because if you crack, they can say, "See, I told you so." But you won't. Because you've already done the hard part. You saw them for who they really are. And now, your strength is too loud for their lies to drown out. There will be moments you feel exhausted. Moments you want to go back just for peace. But what you miss is not the person. It's the version of you who didn't yet know the truth. That innocence. That hope. But you're not going back to being unaware just to feel safe. Because that wasn't safety. That was denial. Real peace isn't found in pretending. It's found in honoring yourself. Fully. Relentlessly. Without guilt. Keep building. Keep healing. Every time you choose growth over chaos, you're winning a battle they can't even see. You are not cold for protecting your energy. You are not bitter for setting boundaries. You are not wrong for no longer accepting less than you deserve. You are free. And freedom scares people who are still living in lies. Let it. You didn't come this far just to survive. You came to rise, to speak, to lead, to become a version of yourself that doesn't flinch, doesn't fold, and doesn't need permission to shine. This is not just a healing season. It's a rebirth. Stay with it. Stay in it. Because the storm you're walking through now is preparing you to never fear one again. There's a moment in every healing journey when you realize they're not done playing the game. You've just stopped participating. And that shift, that silence from you, it drives them deeper into discomfort. Because bad people don't just lose interest when their control breaks. They get louder in the shadows. They start mimicking your moves, mirroring your growth, pretending they've changed. They craft a new version of themselves, not because they've evolved, but because they hope you'll question your decision. That's the trick. They want you to second guess your progress. They want you to wonder if maybe they're different now. But you must remember, they're only performing peace, and performance always cracks under pressure. The truth is, your evolution has forced them to adapt. They don't like the new you. The strong, aware, emotionally grounded version. Because this version can't be gaslit, can't be guilted, can't be baited back into dysfunction. So they reinvent themselves just enough to look healed. They study your growth not to grow themselves, but to bait you back into comfort. They know what to say. They know how to act. They may even fool others. But your soul knows the difference. You feel it in your chest. You sense it in your silence. And that intuition, that's your gift. Never trade it for nostalgia. You're not crazy for being cautious. You're wise. You've learned that real change isn't in appearance. It's in consistency. It's not in words. It's in patterns. People don't just wake up transformed. They become it through time, effort, and self-confrontation. Bad people avoid that work. They skip the discomfort. They choose the shortcut. So they try to wear growth like a mask, hoping you'll stop looking too closely. But the more healed you become, the less that mask fools you. Because real growth doesn't just change how someone acts. It changes what they allow, what they admit, what they apologize for without being asked. Keep listening to that inner knowing. You're not bitter. You're not holding a grudge. You're holding space for yourself, for your peace, for your new beginning. Let them mimic. Let them perform. You don't have to prove anything. Your journey isn't about showing anyone who you are. It's about becoming someone who no longer needs validation to stand tall. And that power, that inner stillness, that unshakable self-respect, they'll never be able to fake that because you earned it through fire. And what's earned through fire can't be stolen through flattery. Let their new image be their disguise. Let your silence be your message. You don't need to expose them. You don't need to respond. Your growth speaks volumes. It's louder than their performance, stronger than their strategy, more permanent than their pretending. Stay grounded. Stay clear. This is not your season to fix anyone. This is your season to build something no one can tear down. The old you would have entertained the illusion. The new you walk straight through it, unbothered, unmoved, and completely free. Some people don't seek redemption. They seek revenge for being exposed. And when you stop tolerating their lies, when you no longer dance to their chaos, they begin to resent your clarity. They don't attack you outright. No, that would be too obvious. Instead, they act subtle. They act wounded. They play the victim in a story where they were the villain. It's manipulation wrapped in pity, guilt disguised as sadness. They want the world to believe you wronged them. And if you're not prepared, if your self-worth still leans on external approval, you might start to wonder if they're right. But deep inside, you know better. Because truth doesn't twist. It doesn't bend to perception. It stands even when it's surrounded by noise. When bad people know that you know, they shift their strategy. They start planting seeds, little comments, small suggestions, things that seem harmless. But over time, they grow into doubt, not just in you, but around you. They want others to wonder if maybe you were the problem. If maybe your strength is actually coldness. If maybe your distance is cruelty. And this is where the inner work matters most. Because when the pressure builds outside, your inner foundation must be unshakable. You don't have time to explain your growth to those committed to misunderstanding it. You don't need to clear your name in spaces where your peace is not welcomed. Their goal is to shrink you, to drain your energy, not through direct conflict, but through emotional confusion. They want you defensive. They want you off balance. But you've come too far to fall for that. You've learned to recognize when energy doesn't feel safe. You've learned that boundaries aren't walls. They're doors that only open for honesty. And when people can't reach you through lies, they'll try to reach you through guilt. Don't open the door. You are not responsible for how others choose to handle your truth. You are not cold for not responding. You are not wrong for protecting your light. Your silence is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is the result of growth, not avoidance. You've learned that arguing with lies only gives them breath. You've discovered that staying grounded in your peace is more powerful than shouting your truth. And that's what they hate most. That they can't move you anymore. That their old tricks don't land. That your worth is no longer tied to their approval. This is where your power grows, in silence, in restraint, in peace that doesn't flinch under pressure. You don't need to prove you're good to people who are invested in painting you as bad. Let them talk. Let them perform. Let them chase the crowd. Your purpose doesn't need applause. Your healing doesn't need permission. And your strength doesn't need validation. You already know who you are, and that truth, that certainty, will always be louder than their noise. Keep walking. Keep rising. Keep choosing yourself. Every step forward is proof that you were never the one in the wrong. They hate the fact that your silence speaks louder than their noise. But what they hate even more is that you've stopped reacting. Bad people feed off your reactions, your frustration, your confusion, your tears. It validates their sense of control. It reminds them they can still get inside your head, twist your emotions, and leave you doubting yourself. When you stop reacting, they lose their grip, and that terrifies them. Because once you become emotionally unavailable to manipulation, you become untouchable. You stop being a pawn in their game, and they realize they never had real power to begin with. That's the moment their ego starts to crack. This is when the psychological warfare begins. They'll do things just to provoke a response, then pretend they did nothing wrong. They'll test your boundaries to see if you'll fold. They'll disguise criticism as concern, sabotage as advice, control as care. But now you see it clearly. You know the difference between love and possession, between respect and fear, and you've made a decision, a quiet, powerful decision, to protect your peace at all costs. That choice changes everything. It rewrites the rules. It strips their manipulation of its fuel. And it reminds you that real power isn't loud. Real power is quiet self-trust. The strength they hate most is the one that doesn't show itself in anger or words. It shows itself in your refusal to explain yourself to people who've already made up their minds. It shows up in your stillness, in your focus, in the way you refuse to carry what doesn't belong to you. That kind of strength threatens every illusion they've built about who you are, because you're no longer playing defense. You're no longer emotionally available for destruction. You've shifted your energy inward. You've taken responsibility for your healing, and nothing scares manipulative people more than someone who doesn't need them for validation anymore. They'll call it pride. They'll say you've changed. They'll try to make others believe you're cold, distant, even cruel. But don't let their words reach your core. People committed to misunderstanding you will always find something wrong, no matter how kind or patient you are. Their perception is not your truth, your alignment, your integrity, your quiet confidence. That's your truth. That's your anchor. And every time you choose it, you win. Not for them to see, not for the world to clap, but for you. Because you know what it costs to betray yourself. You know the pain of being pulled in circles, trying to please people who only love the version of you they can control. This time, you choose differently. You choose your energy. You choose your peace. You choose the version of you that doesn't flinch when they throw their old tactics your way. You choose to walk away, not out of weakness, but because your growth no longer fits in the rooms where your pain was created. And that quiet, grounded choice is the one thing they'll never understand. They don't just hate your strength. They resent your clarity, because once you start seeing things for what they really are, you stop falling for illusions. You stop chasing apologies that will never come. You stop looking for closure in people who were never open. And that shift, that internal awakening, it burns every false connection to the ground. They know it. They feel it. And that's why they scramble to reassert control. They can't handle that their usual tactics no longer land, that the fog they once kept you in is now gone. You're clear. You're grounded. You're awake. And that is the most dangerous thing to anyone who built their influence on your confusion. They start to twist reality, not because they're right, but because they need to pull you back into self-doubt. They'll act like they're the victim, that you're the one who changed, that your growth is betrayal, that your silence is cruelty. But this isn't about hurting them. It's about saving yourself. You're not walking away out of anger. You're walking away because staying would cost you your peace, your identity, your future. That kind of decision takes power, not the loud kind, the quiet kind, the kind of power that builds when you finally stop justifying your worth. They want the old version of you, the one that explained every boundary, that apologized for being hurt, that overextended, overgave, overproved. But that version of you is gone because you've learned that you don't have to lose yourself to be accepted. That love that demands your silence isn't love, it's control. And you're done shrinking to fit into the lives of people who only loved you when you were easy to manipulate. You've risen, not with pride, but with purpose. Not to destroy, but to protect, because the cost of peace is high, but the cost of staying small is even higher. They'll accuse you of being distant when you start prioritizing your mental clarity. They'll say you're selfish when you finally focus on your healing. They'll act confused when you refuse to argue, explain, or engage in their drama. But that's not your problem to solve. You're not here to convince anyone of your goodness. You're here to align with your truth, to walk the road that honors your heart. And if that means walking alone for a while, so be it. That's silence. It's sacred. It's where you rebuild, where you remember who you are. So when they try to bait you with guilt, remind yourself you're not here to fix what you didn't break. You're here to grow, to evolve, to become someone your younger self would be proud of. The kind of person who no longer tolerates chaos just to feel needed. The kind of person who chooses peace over performance. And when you do that, truly, deeply, you don't just change your life. You change the atmosphere around you. And the people who once fed on your doubt will feel the shift. Not because you told them, but because you became someone they can no longer reach. They'll feel it when their words no longer sting, when their silence no longer unsettles you, when their presence no longer has the power to shift your energy. This is the developmental understand. They've lost the version of you they controlled, and they'll try everything to resurrect it. But there's nothing left for them to grasp, because once you reclaim your power, it no longer resides in their hands. It's internal now, anchored, unshakable. Not because you're trying to prove anything, but because you've finally chosen to live in alignment with who you are, not who they needed you to be. You're no longer chasing validation in people who can't even validate themselves. You're no longer explaining your boundaries to those who never respected them in the first place. You're no longer offering access to those who only used it to exploit. That's not bitterness. That's clarity. That's growth. That's the cost of becoming conscious. Because when you rise, you start noticing everything. The patterns, the manipulation, the cycles. And you don't just notice them, you stop participating in them. That exit isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It's not for show. It's silent, clean, permanent. And it shakes the foundation of everything they thought they controlled. Because the one thing you finally understand is that your peace is not up for negotiation. It's not a reward for being good. It's not a privilege someone gets to grant or revoke. It's a non-negotiable standard now, a baseline, a boundary that doesn't move just because someone is uncomfortable. That level of self-respect rewires you. It changes how you see conflict, how you see people, how you see yourself. And the moment you choose it consistently, you stop performing for acceptance. You stop molding yourself for approval. You stop chasing love in places that never knew how to give it. That shift, that decision, it makes you different. Not harder, but wiser. Not colder, but clearer. Because healing isn't about closing your heart. It's about guarding it with wisdom. You've given too much of yourself to people who only saw pieces, never the whole, who loved your light but hated your fire, who celebrated your softness but feared your power. And now, finally, you're done fragmenting yourself to be digestible. You've come home to your full self. And in doing so, you've become immune to the games that once tore you apart. Let them talk. Let them misunderstand. Let them label your growth as rebellion. Their discomfort is not your cue to shrink. Their confusion is not your burden to fix. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be whole. And if wholeness costs you connections built on false versions of yourself, let them fall away. You'll survive their absence. You'll thrive in your truth. You'll build a life so rooted in authenticity that manipulation has no place to land. No cracks to creep through. No insecurities to weaponize. Just you, clear, calm, and completely untouchable. The moment you stop explaining yourself is the moment your energy starts returning home. Every time you withhold the need to defend, justify, or convince, you reclaim fragments of your power that were scattered in the hands of those who never deserved it. You begin to realize how much of your life was lived trying to be seen by people who chose blindness, trying to be heard by people who refused to listen, trying to be loved by people who only knew how to control. And In that realization, you no longer crave their approval. You outgrow it, not from arrogance, but from alignment. Not because you think you're better, but because you finally know your worth. Silence becomes your strength, not your surrender. Detachment becomes your clarity, not your cruelty. You stop matching energy and start protecting your own. You stop entering battles that only drain and never evolve. Because you've finally understood that not every invitation deserves your response. Not every opinion deserves your reaction. And not every conflict deserves your presence. You rise not to fight harder, but to stop fighting altogether for spaces that don't value peace. You grow into someone who doesn't respond to noise with more noise. You respond with stillness. And in that stillness, your boundaries speak louder than any explanation ever could. They won't understand it. They'll call it pride, coldness, distance. But it's none of those things. It's preservation. It's you choosing to pour into places that don't leak. It's you refusing to keep bleeding for relationships that only ever bandage their side of the wound. You no longer tolerate one-sidedness disguised as love. You no longer confuse chaos with passion. You no longer carry guilt for walking away from people who made you walk on eggshells just to keep the peace. You finally recognize that the peace they demanded from you was the silence of your own truth. And that's a price you're no longer willing to pay. You don't need to announce your evolution. You don't need to explain your absence. Growth is not a press release. It's a personal revolution. And those who can't feel it, who can't honor it, who try to shrink it back into something familiar, are no longer your concern. You're not abandoning anyone. You're just no longer abandoning yourself, and the freedom that follows is unmatched. Because when you stop negotiating your value, life starts aligning in ways it never could when you were playing small. The universe meets you at the level of your self-respect, not your desperation. And when you walk like you know you belong, even your silence commands attention. This is the new standard. Not perfection, but presence. Not performance, but peace. You're not here to beg for a seat. You're here to build your own table. You're not here to tolerate. You're here to transform. And every step you take in truth, every moment you choose self-honor over self-betrayal, you become more powerful than any version of yourself that was ever manipulated into silence. You are not difficult for knowing what you deserve. You are not too much for refusing to shrink into silence when your soul is begging to expand. When you finally stop apologizing for having standards, something within you shifts. You begin to see how long you've tolerated what was tearing you down simply to avoid being called selfish, cold, or hard to love. But you're not hard to love. You were just loving in places where love was weaponized against you. You gave your light to people who only ever wanted control, not connection. Now you know better. And knowing better is the first spark of liberation. Some people will resent that spark. They'll call your confidence arrogance. They'll call your peace avoidance. They'll call your silence disrespect. But what they're really angry about is their inability to manipulate you like they used to. They no longer know which buttons to press because you've dismantled the control panel. You no longer respond to chaos like you once did. You've evolved, and that evolution threatens the comfort of those who depended on your confusion to keep their power. So they shift, they twist. They start painting you as the problem because the truth you now embody shines a light on the lies they lived in. And some people would rather destroy the mirror than see their reflection. But you don't owe them your energy. You don't owe them your clarity. You've already paid enough in time, tears, and trust. Your focus now belongs to your healing. Your attention belongs to your future. Your presence belongs to those who value it without conditions. Let them talk. Let them gossip. Let them call you every name in the book. None of that matters when you are finally walking in truth. None of that matters when your soul is at peace with the choices you're making. Peace is the loudest rebellion, and healing is the softest form of strength. You've learned that not everyone gets to know your next move. Not everyone gets access just because they once had it. Proximity does not equal permission. And just because someone once held your heart doesn't mean they still hold your best interest. It's okay to love people from a distance. It's okay to grieve what was while still protecting what's becoming. Growth requires separation, not out of hatred, but out of necessity. You're not punishing anyone. You're prioritizing yourself. This is how power is reclaimed, not by yelling, not by fighting, but by refusing to be pulled back into roles you've outgrown. You're not here to play small so others feel big. You're not here to be the emotional crutch for people who refuse to stand on their own. You're here to rise, and every step forward leaves behind a version of you that once thought survival was enough. But now you're ready to live, to breathe, to thrive. And no one gets to define that path except you. You are not behind. You are not late. You are right on time for the version of you that's awakening now. The world taught you to rush, to compare, to measure your worth by someone else's pace. But that noise no longer belongs in your mind. Your timing is divine. Your journey is sacred. Every pause, every setback, every moment that felt wasted was a necessary part of your becoming. You weren't stalling. You were aligning. You weren't failing. You were preparing. And now, all that inner work, all that hidden struggle, it's beginning to bloom into power. Real power. The kind that doesn't need validation, doesn't beg to be seen, doesn't compromise to be accepted. It simply exists, calm, unshakable, certain. The peace you're chasing doesn't live in a perfect future. It lives in your decision to stop betraying yourself in the present. Every time you say yes to what drains you, you're teaching your soul that your boundaries are negotiable. But they're not. Your energy is sacred. Your presence is valuable. And your willingness to walk away from what dishonors you is not weakness, it's wisdom. You don't need to prove your worth to anyone who refuses to see it. Let them misunderstand you. Let them go. Not everyone is meant to stay. Some people are only chapters in your book, not the entire story. And you don't owe anyone a lifetime of yourself just because they showed up during a vulnerable page. Your healing is loud to those who benefited from your silence. Your growth is disruptive to those who expected your struggle to serve them. But none of that is your burden. You are not responsible for making others comfortable with your transformation. Your only responsibility is to honor who you're becoming. And becoming isn't always graceful. Sometimes it looks like distance. Sometimes it sounds like quiet. Sometimes it feels like loneliness. But in that stillness, you are meeting the most important person you'll ever know. You. The real you. The one who isn't filtered by fear or diluted by approval. The one who knows what it costs to shrink and is no longer willing to pay the price. You're not here to impress, to conform, or to be tolerated. You're here to create, to evolve, to lead. Not with noise, but with alignment, with integrity, with presence. And presence isn't about being everywhere. It's about being fully where you are, unapologetically, intentionally, courageously. Every time you show up for yourself, you are rewriting the story that told you you weren't enough. Every time you choose rest over burnout, clarity over chaos, truth over comfort, you are reclaiming your voice. So let the world spin. Let the chaos roar. You are rooted. You are ready. And this time, you're not stepping forward out of desperation. You're rising from clarity, from purpose, from truth. And nothing, not fear, not doubt, not history, can hold back a soul that finally remembers its own power. You're not starting over. You're starting aligned.